All right. Welcome to the Automerge Community Call Spooky Edition. I will be your host today. We'll let people filter in for the next sort of like 2-3 minutes here, and we'll get started at 5 after. We were just doing some mic checks and camera tests with David, who's unfortunately having some camera issues, but I think we got his screen sharing working. So we still have quite a few people coming in, and I'm going to deputize a couple co-hosts. For anyone not watching the chat, yes, in fact, a real witch. Okay, well, people joining has actually slowed. So this might be, oh no, never mind. And then several people entered the waiting room. Thanks. Getting compliments on the hat. Xander, I think your mic's on. If you could just mute yourself. Thanks. All right. Well, let's at least get started with the agenda because we have a pretty packed show today, if you will. So I'm your host. I'm the Friendly Witch, and we are. This is welcome to the October edition of the Automerge Community Call. Not quite on Halloween, but pretty close. So we thought this might be fun. Spooky edition. As usual, we're going to start with some intros and welcome, and then moving on to talks. Today we have 4 talks from 5 people. So Ivan may or may not be able to make the end of the call, but we're going to cross our fingers for the last few minutes to talk about the website. And then after that, anytime we have left over, we can use as open discussion. So with that, a little bit more detail. So we're going to start, as always, Alex is going to tell us a little bit about what's been going on the last month in sort of like the core libraries, what we've been working on. Nick will talk about hypergraph. David will talk about Automerge on Feathers, and has a fun video for us. And then Ivan and Todd will talk about the website refresh. So without further ado, Alex, take it away.
Can't hear you, Alex.
This truly is the morning of technical challenges so far.
How about now?
Much better.
Yeah.
Great. I, for some reason, have 2 headsets and never remember which one I'm using. Right. Let me find this. All right. Can you see a TL drawer?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. This is going to be a short one because a lot of the stuff we're working on is probably going to land later next month, I think. But okay, so this is, as always, I just do a very short thing here. So what's new this month? Main thing, which we'll hear more about later, is the new website. which I love and I'm very excited about. It makes me much more excited to point people at our website. We also updated the Rust library to 5.7, which is kind of mostly a bunch of boring maintenance work, but the Rust library was on the we did a bunch of work a few months ago. Well, it took a year of Orion's time to make the memory usage of Automerge documents much more similar to the file size. So it's much more predictable and also 100x smaller. But that wasn't actually in the published Rust library version because I had to update a bunch of ecosystem dependencies as well. So the Rust library is now the same code as running in the 3.0 of the JavaScript package. And we have a package that we're working on. This isn't ready for prime time yet, but it's a bunch of like if you this package is not usable really yet. It's like a thing we're using internally in various experiments, but it's working on getting the various parts of Keyhive that we need integrated with Automerge repo so that you can use Keyhive with Automerge repo, but you don't have to use Keyhive with Automerge repo. So this is co-evolving with some design work we're doing in Automerge repo. In a few months, I expect to see we'll have a more mature and documented version of this, but you'll start being able to actually use Keyhive with your Automerge repo apps if you want. Cool. And then what's cooking? So new things. I'm still working on author and change visibility. So this is the ability to mark a commit in an Automerge document as being by a particular author, where an author is just an arbitrary byte string. And then to be able to use that information to say only show changes by these authors within a particular document. So this is kind of how you implement things like read-only sync in Automerge. You don't actually stop the other end sending changes. You just don't visualize them. You don't allow them to appear in the materialized view. This is a fair old chunk of work, and it's what it allows us to do local first access control with Keyhive, but it's not actually, you don't have to use Keyhive to determine which parts of the document you're allowing people to view. So we're exposing it as a separate API. So you could, for example, have a centralized server that decides what parts of the document is visible to who, and still be able to do access control using that. We also have a new diff by object, which means that we have a diff API. So you can take two versions of an Automerge document and get the diff, like a set of patches that goes from one instant version to the next, which is really useful for seeing how things have changed. We now have an API that allows you to scope that to a particular path within the document. So rather than diffing the whole object, you might diff just say, I don't know, one element in a list that might represent a contact or something like that. This is actually done as just I need to do some, as in we have an implementation of it that works. I would just need to finish code review and get it merged. And similarly, we have this more memory efficient load. So we did all this work to reduce memory usage, but we still have a spike in memory usage at load time. When you load a document that has a lot of changes in it, we actually have to reify all of those changes, and then we throw them all away again in order to not use all of this memory. So you get a spike at that point, which can still be problematic for big documents. So we now have a version of load which is more memory efficient and uses a much more predictable amount of memory, which should help with busy sync servers, which I'm looking forward to on the account of operating a busy sync server. And then we still have the ongoing work to bring sedimentary into Automerge repo. So whilst this is part of the Keyhive project, it's a general thing that will be useful to everyone. It's effectively a sync protocol that doesn't require the document to be in memory, and means that the sync server is mostly just shipping bytes around. So again, very useful for busy sync servers. You may see a theme here. And that's about it. There's a bunch of ongoing bug fixes I'm working on. I guess one that people may be most aware of is that there's a problem with view, I think, where it can occasionally, there are some scenarios where the view of a doc handle, when you're looking at the version of a document back in time, will show you a state that couldn't possibly have existed at that time. And I'm still trying to figure out what the root cause of that is, but hoping to have a fix for that soon. And also there's a loop in the sync protocol in one scenario, which is due to an optimization we made a few weeks ago. So those two fixes, look out for them coming down the pipe soon. And that's it for me.
Awesome. So we're just going to keep rolling hold any questions to the end or throw them in the chat where Alex will see them. Next up, we have Nick.
Awesome. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. If I'm at 7, 8 minutes, or yeah, scream at me and stop me so I don't go over. Can easily happen, but I try not to. All right. So I'm Nick. Yeah, I'm working for a company called GeoBrowser, and basically working on a framework called Hypergraph. And yeah, this is a presentation. I cut it out from a presentation that we did in July, because this is actually since then we have like working versions. Don't use it in production. It's still evolving, and it will for quite some time because we are doing a lot of things at the same time. But let me give you some context. Basically, this company is building a public data graph or a graph data system where you have entities and relations, and it's all backed by IPFS and blockchain. So it's stored on IPFS and blockchain, and they have different governance models. And they realized all of this data that they have public makes a lot of sense, but they also want to have a counterpart where you can have like private data. But then it also should not be on IPFS and blockchain, because yeah, just metadata that you store something can be very sensible. So the idea was to basically build a counterpart that is end-to-end encrypted, synced via a sync server. So it's like not decentralized, but like very practical. And then with the idea that the user could, because we wanted to have it end-to-end encrypted because the user should retain control over the data. And we wanted to have like real-time collaboration. And in this public data set, that's very tricky to do. But with the private data, there was a lot more control if you have like a simplified solution with a sync server. And with that said, so we had these issues like, how do we deal with all of this? Because this public data model is like, yeah, polymorph and ID based. And so one of my tasks was like, okay, can we make basically this like wonderful thing that can do everything, and then have a nice API that looks like this, for example. So you can define a schema, for example, company, and then you say that's an entity, and you have a name and type text, and then you could do another one where I have like, for example, an event which has a name, but then sponsors, and that could be a relation to a company. And then we want to have like query hook. So we're focusing on React as a first iteration, and say, okay, I want to create an entity of type event in a particular space. And then based on the event definition with name, description, sponsors, you can define it. And of course, then you also want to be able to have live queries for data, and you want to be able to publish it.
Nick,
Yeah.
sorry, just not everyone's on such a big screen. Could you either go full screen or zoom in the
Oh, yes.
slides?
I could actually go to this one. That's better, huh? Yeah. Okay,
Way better.
cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. But that's actually the part for the presentation. What I want to do now is go directly into, yeah. And so Automerge for these private spaces where we wanted to have the synced data. If you want to have automatic conflict resolution on end-to-end encrypted data, a CDT is a must, in my opinion. Yeah, everything else is like madness because, or like really hard to do. So Automerge for me, working on this project was a logical choice. And this is what we basically did when we implemented it. And I want to give you a short demo of like this example here. For example, this is a, you can do PnPm create hypergraph at latest, and then this will create you a demo app, and this is this one. And so here, for example, you can actually public, like, does this fetches data from this public knowledge graph. Let me show you how this actually looks like in code. So basically, we built this API that you can say use entities, and you have a project definition, and then say mode public. So it fetches it from data from the public graph, and then you get these projects, and it's all type safe because project is defined in the schema. And because yeah, technically you don't need this if you only use private data, but we recently made changes to enforce it, and I will show you in a second why. No, I want to go back to this one here. Yeah, we'll get to that. But basically, we have this schema definition, And yeah, this then based on this schema definition, you can do things like use entities, which is kind of a use query, and then you can fetch this from this public knowledge graph, which is an indexer that runs for all of the data. But we wanted to have this for private data as well, and this is where I'm going now. You can also say here we have a private space, and I have already 2 entries in there, but I'm gonna create another one, test 3. And I want to show you, or especially watch the network. What's happening here is we have the WebSocket. Yeah, we have the socket running. It's all. How can I get this? Gonna make this a bit smaller. Messages. We have this one here. Gonna clean it, and then if I'm creating a new project, what we're actually doing is we lorem ipsum, we're creating an entry in an Automerge document. So per space, we have one Automerge document. We are thinking about splitting this up, but sedimentary and so on would be very useful. Or that's why this is the current architecture. And what we're doing is basically every change in Automerge, we listen to, and we take the content and encrypt it, and then basically send it to the server. And that means now if I refresh, I never get the full Automerge document in clear text. What I get is basically a list of these changes, and that's why yeah, I mean, Keyhive and so on is like super interesting because I would love to switch over, but yeah, we needed to build something and be very practical and have something ready. And what you can see is basically we have the like space events. So if you add members, remove members, and yeah, there's lots of details, but I want to focus on Automerge. And then we basically have per change like a list of encrypted content and signed, so we can verify it. And what's happening then is that all of these changes, when you load a space, they get decrypted and then get feed into this Automerge document, and basically on the client side you have the full space available. And if we would, what we haven't done yet, or we had it in the beginning, but yeah, just for debugging purposes, to simplify things, then you can enable local first storage via IndexedDB, for example, and then you can have really like a local first app. Every space, every private space can be a local first inspired application or yeah, space, and then you have the data locally, and you just have to listen to updates. That is the idea, and you don't have to fetch the whole full space every time. And in terms of API, if we look, for example, here, we could keep it very.
Yeah, but they don't have it.
Sorry.
You don't want Pfizer. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah,
I just
so
muted him.
perfect, thank you. Yeah, and so we try to stick to the same API basically for just with the different mode, private and public, to have like one API that is very approachable. Again, it's the same schema definition, and then you can use it for private and public mode. And this is how I can fetch all the projects that are stored basically in one space of this particular type. And I can list these projects, and they are type safe. And what we're actually doing is we are parsing. So when you decrypt and reconstruct the Automerge document, when we're using use entities based on this schema definition, we actually parsing the results. So that means even if someone injects invalid entries into your Automerge document, you're always only gonna get the valid ones. What you also can get here is invalid entities. So if parsing fails for certain entities, you can also access them, potentially fix them, and so on and so forth. But the idea is you always get the full content. So if there are entities with the type set to this particular type ID, because everything is ID based, I'm not so happy about that, but yeah, it is what it is. is basically you can still get the data, and the client could actually do necessary changes to fix it. And yeah, and then you can get these utility functions also with hooks. It's like we can also still improve on the typing here, but basically you can get this create project functionality function, and then I think if I'm not mistaken, description was optional in, yeah. So what I could do now, if it's optional, it's all type safe. I can actually leave out the description, and that's fine. But I could bring back description. If I leave out the name, it's gonna be TypeScript invalid because yeah, the name is absolutely required. And you can also manage or have relations in that sense. So for project, we have a relation to an image avatar, and like XURL is optional, but here we have a relation to an image. So what you could do is then when you have create project, you can also set the avatar. And then because avatar is a list, is a relation, it has to be basically an array of IDs. And then, yeah, basically you could pass in, you could create an avatar first, for example. So you could do const avatar if you had to create avatar, get the ID from that avatar in the Automerge document in the private space, and then pass in the ID as a reference. One thing, or one of the last things I want to show, how I'm on time. Yeah, probably pretty much it. Yeah, let me show this one last thing. Is find many. So yeah, gonna go there. I have console log. I put it in there, the Automerge document, to give you an idea of how we actually store the data in Automerge. I think this is for this community a lot more interesting. So what we do is, because everything is designed around entities and relations, basically and every type has a unique ID, and every property has a unique ID. Initially, we basically store just the names in there. But if you want to really be able that different apps can, so there's a concept of that different apps can access the same space on a sync server. If you want to have different apps, the decision of the team for the public knowledge graph, and that's why we did it for the private one as well, is that you basically don't store the properties by name, but rather by ID. I have to say, you have to build a lot of tooling to make this usable. So it's very, very painful, but yeah, the team is very convinced about it. And then also the types, to have polymorphism, you could basically have then internally have an array of types. So an entity could be of type person and human, or yeah, whatever. So you could apply multiple types, and then if you map everything by property ID, basically you can be absolutely sure that yeah, an entity can have very different properties, and then depending on the type, result in different you can load different things, and it can still be the same entity. This is at least this idea of like doing kind of mixins on data. But yeah, and this is how we store data, and so we have to do constantly this mapping to make it usable in code. But have interoperability between different apps in the and relations. Right now this is one empty, but it's basically the same concept. They have done a mapping, relations mapping with like from entity to entity, and then you have types and necessary information. Yeah, and one last thing, the fun thing for me, diving deeper a bit into Automerge stuff, was, for example, having a handler. So you want to have live queries that react to real-time updates. I was basically building this on-change function that listens to patches of the Automerge document, and then I could reverse engineer is like, what are the options there and what do we actually need to cover? So basically figure out like, okay, this changed relations and deleted entities and deleted relations and changed entities, and I could basically boil it down to these different changes, and then based on that I could recover or like build up this graph that I internally need to make sure live queries are possible. That was quite interesting. One next step is probably like this became quite complex. So I think an improvement would be to use and like one of these papers of differential flow to optimize it. But yeah, this is on my bucket list and not didn't get there yet. My homegrown graph-based system currently does the job, but yeah, now and then we find bugs that are not ideal. So I would love to use something that is more works better. And with that, gonna call it a day. Feel free to ask me any questions. I think I already went over. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. We have time for one question, if everyone has one. I will wait awkwardly until somebody asks.
Yeah. Where can I stop the screen?
I can say, Nick, congratulations. And one small question. I see you using arrays a lot when it's relationships or properties that are many. Have you considered using sets instead?
No, not really. Since this is like user API, I think for user APIs, people prefer simple maps and arrays. But yeah, sets could make sense. Maybe you could accept both. But yeah. Yeah, but I think the idea was to like use very simple data structures so the API is very simple and easy to use. That was the main focus here.
Okay, great job.
Thank you.
Maybe also for context, Nico works on something also graph-based CRDT stuff. It would be interesting if you two haven't had a chance to chat to see if you could cross-pollinate.
Yeah, we know each other.
Okay,
we are in touch. We're in touch.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have some questions, but we'll take them into the Discord after. Like encryption granularity, some stuff like this. But yeah, thanks. Super interesting. And if people have other questions, please throw them in the chat where Nick will be able to see them. And then, assuming we have time after all the presentations, we can open those up in the general discussion. David, you're up. So we were having some AV challenges in our mic test earlier with David, so we'll see if this works. Everybody cross their fingers.
Hello? I don't know if anybody's going to see this, but I'm recording this to let you know what happened. My name is... I don't have much time. It's coming closer. We were sent out with the Radiation Surveillance Division to replace what looked like a faulty FPS sensor. But when we came to the site, we found this thing. It took Marshall, and now I'm. And now I'm hiding here. I'm trying to file an emergency report. My system is not connecting. I'm recording this message to know what happened.
Hooray, it worked. Happy Halloween, or almost soon happy spooky season. Today at 2 minutes before 9, I learned two things. I learned what video codec Zoom supports and that it doesn't like if you delete your background image. So I'm actually gonna, or your background video. So I'm just quickly gonna change this because this is causing me some trouble. Okay, now I'm gonna share my actual screen. Brooke, let me know if can you see it?
It works.
Awesome. Yeah, we had some trouble. Of course, I tested all before and then it didn't work. So hey everybody, let's see if we can turn this around from our ill-fated nuclear engineer to what this has to do with Automerge. I'm David. For the last 10 plus years, I've been working on an open source framework called Feathers, which is a JavaScript library that to build REST APIs and real-time applications. And one of the things I like about Feathers is that it works transport agnostic. So earlier this year, one of the long-term supporters of the projects, a French company called Colisio, contacted me and said, hey, we would like to add some offline capabilities to Feathers. They are building an open source mapping software that they then work with clients to build custom solutions on top of that. One of them, which brings us back to our story earlier, is with the French Department for Nuclear Safety. They have a couple of sensors that are making recordings, and then people can go out in the field and make observations. And of course, sometimes you're offline and you still want to input your data. So they were looking for a way to be able to do that and then synchronize things with the Feathers API later on. Another use case that they have is with Airbus. They can find landing pads for the airplanes for certain weather conditions if they want to test them. And during tests, the airplanes are running the entire app on a server, making observations. And what they wanted to do is then when the plane lands again and connects with the internet, to synchronize the server state with the actual cloud server state. So really interesting use cases. I always love when doing open source to actually hear about people that are doing cool and interesting stuff with your software, because often you only hear about when there is a problem, as any open source developer probably knows. So what I quickly want to show you is how part of how this looks like, what we implemented over the last little while. And first on a little bit how Feathers works as well. So I'm not going to type, but I'm going to quickly show this little app that I put together. This is my standard go-to example, which is fairly straightforward. I have a message that has an ID, a text, and a created date. And then I have my message service, which stores our messages. And then we implement a find, get, and create that just deals with those messages. You can imagine that this would also work with a database or anything else. And then this is basically everything that Feathers needs. So what you do down here is you initialize your application, register your service. You can listen to events on this messages service. So whenever somebody calls create, you get a created event. And I can also use the service to create new messages. And if you run this, you can see that the message got created. Our server is listening. This works with, it does work in a browser, but only locally, but it also works with Dino, Bun, Cloudflare Workers, and Node. And if you toss this into this Node server, you get the API, a full-on API that does a lot of this automatically. You also get real-time updates. So what we can do in our front end, I always had a really nice front end integration, is you basically initialize the same feathers as a client and say, oh, instead of creating the server-side service or talking to database, just make some requests to this remote server and then also communicate our messages in real time. So this is how it looks like. And then, of course, we get these updates as well. So this is a really basic example of a Feathers app. Now, the thing is, what if I don't, well, you'd go and deploy this server to our real life Eldritch Horror Amazon Web Services. And then if US East 1 goes offline, too bad, it happens, right? But what if we don't want a server at all? Well, this is where Automerge comes in. We're going to delete the server. And instead of saying connect to our server, we're just saying make us an Automerge service. And then I have a get document here, which basically just is like a basic Automerge browser repo initialization with Automerge sync server. And then if it can't find a document, it creates one and stores it in the hash. So this is kind of like my really simple hack for, come on. This is the thing of watching David type. It was the one things that I was going to type. It should, let's see if it works. No. Oh man. Sorry, folks. Let's try this again. New Automerge service. There is a challenge with top level await, but I think it should be working now. So now we have the same thing in our chat. So if somebody created a Feathers application and uses their services this way, we have the exact same thing, but it's all backed by an Automerge service. So if we open this somewhere here, it will also update in real time on the other side, which is pretty fun. And we don't have any server at all anymore. I always say this with an asterisk because there is a sync server, but it's a sync server, so it's a different kind of deployment than our big custom node applications. The last thing that I wanted to show is how this all works together with everything. We're building a authentication system that basically links public-private key identities to a traditional email or Google or social login or text login. So we built this chat, which runs on Automerge, that if you go to chat.feathers.dev, you log in with an email address or Google and get an access token that actually also works offline. And then you can use our Automerge server with that login. Come on. 7, 5, 6, 1. And then you can use our Automerge server with your login, so you get actual user information of who is using your Automerge document. You can see I'm logged in. This also works offline. I unfortunately can't do this demo now, of course, but when I'm doing it in person, I always go offline, let people send messages, and then come back online And then you can see that all of those messages show up, which is a really, really nice and interesting use case for Automerge and CRDTs. Excellent. That's all I wanted to show. I'm glad it all worked after all. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching my silly Halloween video.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Yeah, we have time for a couple questions if anybody would like to know more.
I'm actually curious, David, how you're authenticating the sync server that you're using.
We put, so the first, waiting for Keyhive, but no, we put just a middleware in front that authenticates the token. So what we basically ended up doing is with our login service, it creates a token that also has the Automerge document URL. And then if you are authenticated with that token, because it's signed, you automatically get into that sync server. So it's still pretty simple, but it's like one additional step to just having to know the Automerge URL, right? And it's worked really well. It's pretty performant, and it's already enough for a lot of use cases. So that's been really cool to see that we're getting to a point where, you know, I've been wanting to do this since 2018 when I did a DAT Beaker browser demo of peer-to-peer syncing chat messages. We're really getting to the point where it feels like this is really prime time production ready, which is super cool. Does this work with all CRDTs? So the Feather service adapter does not. So what we also built was basically a synchronization mechanism that kind of, when people go offline, only synchronizes and stores a subset of the server data in the Automerge document, including the ones that run on the airplanes. So there's a little bit more complexity in there. So this is just Automerge. The login system, I would love to see work with other sync servers as well, just because it is built to work offline, and we'll have UCAN support probably early next year. That is part 2 of my demo of David putting stuff Broke works on into Feathers. That'll be for the UCAN call. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Amazing. Thanks, David. If people have other questions, the chat here, Discord, etc. And without further ado, let's hear about the website from Ivan and Todd.
Hello, everyone. Apologies for all the background noise. I'm outdoors and forgot my AirPods, so I'm going to do the best I can. Todd, are you here also?
I am indeed. Hello, Ivan. Hello, everyone. I can share my screen. Maybe.
Well, you're getting that ready. Do you want me to give some preamble, some backstory?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So this new Automerge homepage and restyled docs and all of that was a project that started, I think, about 6 months ago. Alex and I were talking about wanting to update the website, and then just in August, we finally were like, all right, it's time, let's do it. Oh, Todd, have you made a little tour you can take us on?
I did, yeah. I mean, you can keep going.
No. This is a surprise to me. So yeah, go ahead, take us on a tour.
Yeah, so this is maybe I really didn't put much together. So I think of this as sort of a walk through a garden. This is our Figma where we collected some of our ideas. And many of our ideas are, of course, scattered across Figma, which we use for some of the visual design and collection, as well as our the Ink and Switch internal currently internal tool called Patchwork, which is where we keep notes and have a TL draw doodling space and whatnot. And so, in the spirit of walking through a garden with all of the the weeds and beautiful plants and flowers and green spaces, um, we can start with some of the sketching that we did. Or actually, I don't know. I should maybe ask Brooke. Do you want? We started with like a brand exercise, which was, um, from my perspective, this was like sort of the most important part because it helped us understand what um, what we wanted to achieve and what our goals were for the Automerge website and how we wanted to speak to those goals. Both to each other, but also, publicly, and what those, how those might manifest in a language that, we could use and we're proud of. And so, um, that is, I think we can share some of this, but like, we asked ourselves, like, what will Automerge look like in 5, 10, or 20 years? What does Automerge do and how do we do it? And what's the secret sauce? And I won't go into all of the details, but it was kind of a beautiful experience to, collaborate and in a way just listen to some of the origin stories and some of the deeper thinking and thought that went into a lot of this. And so, with these like sort of like zoomed out boards, we began tinkering with some of the the messaging, and like, of course, like other people have done messaging before and other people have thought about what and how to communicate on a website. And so, there's a mix of ideas that we don't see on the end result of the website, but sort of still live on in um, the motif and how we frame it. And one of the things, and the reason I say that is like one of the things that sort of came to us is this idea that Automerge lets you transcend time and space. And that's not like the key message, of course, that you see on the website, but across this work, when we finally began, tinkering with it, and thinking through how we wanted to present it, one of the key aspects is a demo that would allow people to experience the benefits of Automerge and see what it is capable of, but in a way that is not overly technical and more playful and fun. And so this was like, all of that work that we did around language and like framing it and all of that, like that took a bunch of effort, and eventually we landed on some words that people who I've worked with before are familiar with me thinking of how words are like key to like an information hierarchy. And this is why APIs are so important, because they're all words. And so with the right words, you can unfold and unfurl big ideas, whether it's visual or whether it's for stringing um, lines of code together. And so anyway, Ivan and I dove in and thought about conceptually what are some ways in which we can do this. And I'll see, you know, one of the ideas was, what if there was some, you know, ASCII game that was interactive that, you know, people could, you know, collaborate and interact with the code and see, or interact with Automerge and see things, you know, conflict resolution and have, you know, surface some of the capabilities. What if we had like live cursoring going on, and of course, like, you know, we've seen demos where there's live cursors before, and you can type things and interact with people, and um, you know, we came to a decision pretty early on where we didn't want to risk bad actors in a demo space, and so Automerge is great. It's local, and so we can kind of lean into that and in a way disallow or prevent some of this happening. But a lot of sketching around the demos. I'll share this. This was some diagramming that I did for PVH. I think he was at local first conf when he presented this, but we needed a way to sort of distill down what Automerge is and does, and how it works at like a sort of mid technical level. And we came to this, you know, like sort of like tree that shows, you know, our like a central Automerge, and how it interacts locally across 3 different clients. And there are some things there that if you've seen the website become familiar, in the diagramming that we did, and a lot of it was due to the early work that we did thinking through this, and then leading into this. Sorry, this is a bit of a ramble, but hey, this is a walk through a garden, so I can with no apology. Um, um, so we iterated, Ivan and I iterated pretty intently on how to demonstrate this work. And, you know, here you can kind of see the beginnings of it. This is certainly more code oriented, which is good, but for a diagram on a website, we felt that this is like maybe leaning in the TMI space, and it's like too technical, and we needed something that was a little bit more well, simplified and clear. And so we sort of stripped away some of that. You know, here we are kind of meandering. And eventually we sort of landed on this notion of like a to-do list where, you know, you could imagine the to-do list and illustrating what the commands are that are going on, what sharing the JSON that's behind the scenes, and then sort of reversing the flow where you have this JSON that gets updated across the 2, you know, spaces, and then you end up with this like other client, like a peer client that gets updated accordingly. And all when it was all said and done, this was like a little bit too much, and it was like too complex for both thinking about how to fit all of this into a mobile device, but I think may have been something that we wanted to talk about over several benefits and points, and packing it all into one, one space, became both, difficult and less clear. And so we kept iterating, and you can see we're very fond of ASCII art. We kept iterating. This is fun. We this is a bit of a tangent, but we started working on Automerge with the idea that we're not changing the colors and we're not changing the logo, and we're sticking more to messaging and how that works. But this is me, and I can't resist a fun meander. And so this began as playing around with forking and merging, and it occurred to me that there's some potential, a hint of potential in creating some lettering for that. And so we don't see that on the website for a reason, but it was still nevertheless fun to do. And as we kept going, there were some there were some aesthetics that we liked. We liked this idea of space and time, and I'm a huge fan of like 1-bit, like early computer graphic video games, pixel, bitmap art. And to me, there's something in these, pixels being particles, and helping to visualize how a document might be synced or merged. And so this idea of like particles um, or dots uh, stuck with me. And so thinking through how we might like render graphics in that, or maybe use it as a means to um, communicate how information might transfer back and forth. And one of the, you can see the, sort of patterning emerging there. And that's where this in the demo, that's where this was sort of born, this interaction where sorry, are you guys seeing the Zoom bar pop up?
Nope. Just
No.
Just the screen share.
Great.
Also, just a heads up.
Time.
We're at time. I don't want to cut
Okay.
you off. So we're okay to like go a few minutes over here. But if anybody needs to run, this is recorded. But also no worries if you have another meeting or something. Do what you gotta do.
I want if you are interested, I'd like to pass the torch to Ivan to talk through the demo a little bit. And also if there's like questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, maybe I'll just really quickly show a couple of interactive animated things and some of the tools that we built to build the website. And then if anybody has questions about what Todd was showing, just throw them in the chat and then we can come back to them in a second. Let me share my screen here. Share entire screen. What can go wrong? Cool. So, one thing, oh, and I gotta move this out of the way. Is this coming through, or we got thumbs up if there's screen share coming through and it's visible? Okay, nodding heads, great. So this is a really early prototype that informed our desire for an interactive demo on the homepage. So this is a little playground where I can pull down a card and say, hello, this is a card. and then I can pull down another little card that represents a sync server, and then another little card that represents another client. And I can make edits in one, and this is another one. And they show what Automerge is doing as it synchronizes this data. And the particles in this one are pretty unreliable. You have to kind of wiggle them around to get them to do the thing, because they all want to apply in order. So this was a really early experiment with using particles to visualize Automerge changes, but the UI for it was too loose and it, not discoverable and not easy to play with. So that gradually morphed into some of those sketches that Todd showed about what if we did like a multi-user dungeon ASCII kind of, game where people could interact with each other, but through a constrained channel of communication, so they can't write swear words or whatever at each other. And that eventually became the local only to-do demo, where we're seeing particles flying back and forth between these two clients. One other
the dungeon game would have been a great idea, but as we were sketching it out, we're like, we're not building a game. We're building a website. But the compulsion is very strong. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up making a game eventually.
Specifically, some of the reasons we didn't do it were we wanted something that people could look at and immediately understand what it was without having to kind of figure out what am I looking at? What is this? And something where they could look at it and think, oh, I know what this is. I know how to play with it, because it's one of the, oh, wait a minute. What's going on? No, what? Oh, no. Zoom is requesting permission to bypass something, something, something. That's not what I want. What is going on? All right. Automerge.org. Yeah, so this kind of thing, you might look at this and go, it's just an auto playing thing. I don't need to, do anything other than look at it, and it looks cool and it makes sense and I understand what it's doing. But there's the little extra level where, you can write stuff here and it actually works. And we wanted people to get to that level of interacting with it very quickly if they so chose. So that's why we settled on a to-do list, because it struck the right balance between something that would be familiar, something that people would feel inclined to use, something that they could just watch and not have to interact with. And yeah, it was kind of the local maximum that we settled on. One other thing I wanted to show is we were playing a lot with these dot grid patterns and dithering, like we have down at the bottom of the homepage, these dithered photos. One of the tools that we made to explore this is this little dot grid where there's particles moving across the dot grid, but the particles are rendered as a sort of a influence region that makes the dots in the dot grid swell as they move across. And there's sliders we can use to play with how big are the dots, how big are they towards the center versus around the perimeter, how big is the grid, right? Is the grid really big? Is the grid really small? And we had a couple of different variations of this tool that we used to try and figure out how do we want stuff to look, and how do we make use of these dots. So that was another fun part of this project, was sort of making tools to help us feel our way through what should the homepage do. And then I guess just one other detail I want to share really quickly is this dithering down here. If you have a dithered or half-toned image as a JPEG or a PNG or something like that, and you want to do fluid responsiveness, which is as you resize the page, the images kind of grow and shrink dynamically with the layout. You can't do that with a pre-dithered image, because if you start zooming, especially zooming out, I don't know how well this is going to come through on Zoom, but you get these Moyer patterns where you get the screen door effect when you scale that dithered image, because those pixels are all on a really regular grid. And when you superimpose another grid on top of that, you get all sorts of aliasing, I guess. So this dither is done on the client. So these are actually not images, they're canvases. And then every time you resize, we redo the dither on the fly, just so that you always see it perfectly crisp, no matter what size you're looking at it at, whether it's down in the phone layout and you've got it nice full width, or whether it's in the wider layouts where it's side by side. So yeah, that's just a couple of little touches. There's a bunch more I could go into, but that's just some of my favorite bits about this project.
Amazing. I will leave space for one question just because we're over time. Other than that, we can take it into the Discord. Any questions? Anyone want to jump to the front of the line? Nothing. Okay, great. Oh, sorry.
When will it be done?
When will which? Sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the timeline? When will it be done?
It's live.
It's live? What?
Go to automerge.org. Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't realize that. Awesome. Huh. Oh, wow.
And the demo is interactive. It's spreading Automerge under the hood.
Nice.
It is single player though, I think. I think it's just local. Yeah.
Yeah, just
it's-
local, just for safety reasons. We could have run it in a way where the changes you make sync to other real people. But there's like a sort of a safety downside. You don't want people swearing at each other. There's also a like ghost town problem where it's like if you go there and there's nobody else online at the same time, it's less fun than if you go there when there are other people. And so it led us to a design where we wanted something that you could do just on your own that would still give you a feel of what Automerge is going to do for your apps. So that's how we settled on that choice.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. So thanks everyone. We will see you all in November. As always, if you want to hear more about any of those projects or the website or David's brain about feathers or Nick's about hypergraph, any of these things, the Discord is listed there on third from the top. The way Luma works, you have to sign up for each individual event if you want to RSVP and get the link. So head over to Luma and sign up. And other than that, thank you all so much for joining for this special spooky edition. And we'll see you all later.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Awesome.